I was born in England, and when I was a kid, I lived there and went to one of those stuffy public schools for a number of years that you might remember from things like Masterpiece Theater. If you think about the song Headmaster Ritual by the classic English indie group, The Smiths, you should check it out on YouTube. It's a great song that describes the school that I went to pretty well. So my parents were divorced. I lived with my dad in England at the time. And in the summers, I would go and visit my mom, who lived in the United States. And like many teenagers, I was always looking for a way to distinguish myself from the crowd. So one summer, while I was visiting my mom in the States, I bleached my hair blonde. I kind of had one of those spiky sort of Billy Idol looks, right? Just like, a lot of punk kids at the time did. So at the end of the summer, went back to England from the States. And going back to school, out of the hundreds of schoolboys dressed in identical uniforms, I was the only one with bleached blonde hair. I had succeeded in distinguishing myself from the crowd. Speaking of distinguishing yourself from the crowd, here in the United States alone, there are over 3 million construction companies. How can you distinguish yourself from all of those contractors? It's going to be a bit harder than going to the pharmacist and getting some of that hair bleach, right? It's going to take work and effort on your part. And in this episode, I'm going to detail 7 ways that you can distinguish yourself from other contractors and make a lot of money. While I'm recording this, it's Thanksgiving in the United States. I am thankful to each and every person who listens to Construction Genius, who watches the video versions of the show on YouTube. I'm thankful for folks like Eric Jones, the president and CEO of Fouché Construction out of Washington State. Eric was telling me a little while ago that he got to know me by listening to all of my podcast episodes. And Eric, I hope you enjoy this episode, and I thank you and all of my other listeners who have given me some great feedback on this podcast. So like I said, in today's episode, we're going to talk about 7 ways that you can distinguish your construction company from the crowd and make a lot of money. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the 7 ways, and then we'll go into each one of them in a little bit of detail. And then I'm going to give you a simple way you can use this list to take action and improve the performance of your company. And by the way, this 7 ways of distinguishing yourself is inspired by this book. It's called The Construction MBA, Practical Approaches to Construction Contracting, written by a gentleman named Matt Stevens. I want to encourage each and every one of you who runs a construction company or works in a construction company to purchase that book. It is excellent. And I will put a link in the show notes to the book. So here are the 7 ways that you can distinguish yourself. Number 1, pursue niche work at which you are excellent and profitable. Number 2, deal with clients that you know well. Number 3, work with project partners that you trust. Number 4, maintain high quality, efficient construction work. 5th, emphasize and demand safety. Number 6, insist on timely payment for all dollars earned. And number 7, have a financial cushion to weather bad times. Now, as you think through that list, you may say all those are fairly obvious, and I would agree with you, they are. But as you know, it's not what you know about how to run a construction company, it's what you actually do that is going to distinguish yourself from all of your competition and help you to reap the financial rewards that you're looking for. So let's take a look at each one of those 7 ways. Number 1, pursue niche work at which you are excellent and profitable. What is a niche? A niche is an activity for which a person or a thing is best fitted. I was watching one of those YouTube videos or one of those little clips on Twitter today, and there was this 20-foot white shark, this massive great white shark. And you think about the niche of the great white shark. It is perfectly designed and made to do one thing: swim in the ocean and eat a bunch of sea animals. It doesn't go onto the land, it sticks to the ocean. So a niche is all about the focus and the specialty that you look at in your business. Another way of describing niche is a niche is a focused, targetable portion of the market. So just like the shark is designed to swim around in the sea, what are the types of projects that you do best? When I work with my clients on defining niche, talk about it in terms of the right project in the right location for the right client. And if you're going to understand the niche that you are most excellent and profitable at, you have to look at your project history and see where you have made the most money and where you are least profitable. And as you're looking at those projects, ask yourself, why did we make a bunch of money there, or why did we lose money? And you might find that the answer to those questions is, if we made money, it was the right project in the right location and for the right client. Now, if we lost money, it's probably because one or two of those three things were somehow misaligned. And to help you to really hone in on the right client, right location, and right project type, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to a target market analysis tool that I've put together, that you can just click on that link and you can go and download that tool and go through that filtering process for yourself so that you can identify and focus in on that niche. Now you might ask, what if I want to expand my niche? What if I'm really good in one area, but I want to go out to another area and expand the types of projects or the type of work that I'm doing? Well, again, think about those three aspects: right client, right location, right project. If you can hit two of them, then you may find some success. Let's say you have a client that you really like working with, and they have a particular project that you're very successful at building, but it's slightly out of your geography. Perhaps you don't know the labor force in the geography that you're going into, and you're going to have to develop relationships with them. Or maybe your superintendent is going to have to travel on a regular basis to work on that project, or perhaps your project managers are going to have to spend some time away from home to build that project. But it's the right project with the right client. So you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it to go outside of the geographic location where I make the most money in order to try and expand the work that I do? So these are the kinds of things that you have to ask yourself when you're targeting your niche. And why is a niche so important? Well, it helps you to reduce risk. And reducing risk is one of the keys to profitability and long-term success in construction. My kids, they like to bake cookies. And when they're making cookies, I'm always encouraging them to take the recipe and tweak it and try new things out. Because if they do it well, then it really makes a nice cookie, right? But if they don't do it well, it's no big deal, because they can always make another batch of cookies. But this is not the case in construction. Construction is risky. So if you're a GC, your average net profit is something between 3 and 6%, which means you have to generate $33,000 in revenue just to make $1,000 in profit. And put that another way, it takes approximately 4 to 5 profitable jobs to break even from one bad job. And you know that one bad job can bankrupt your entire company. And that's why picking your niche is so important, because that helps you to minimize risk and also maximize reward. Because, as has been well said, the riches are in the niches. You need to focus in on what you're good at. And not only does a niche help you to reduce risk and increase profitability, it actually helps you with the development of your people. I had an interesting chat with one of my clients recently, and he was looking to readjust the strategy of his business to focus in on construction projects in a particular geographic location close to their main office, and also projects of a certain size. And his whole thinking was this: if I focus on certain projects of a certain size in a particular location, I can really spend a lot of intense time developing people and processes in that one area, so that as my people get up to speed building that type of project, I can then in the future expand the types of projects and the geographies that I'm working in. but he wanted to really nail it in one particular area with one particular project type and size. Having a niche also helps you in your marketing efforts. So you get well known for solving problems and adding value in a particular area with a particular project type. And you can then use that reputation as a means of attracting more clients to you and then repelling other people who perhaps are not a fit. And as you're building work in your niche and making money, it helps you to build up your cash reserves and your experience so that perhaps in the future you could try out other niches without taking massive risks. Also, having a niche creates a moat around your business where you identify a game that you play that others can't or won't, and you make yourself the go-to solution in that area. And that's one of the wonderful things about business is that you get to define the game that you play. Within the parameters of the regulations, wherever you are, you can decide who you want to be. Do you want to stay small? Do you want to get big? Do you want to go narrow and deep in one particular area or broad and wide? It's your world. It's up to you. You get to decide. That's one of the wonderful things about business. The second way to distinguish your construction company from the crowd is to deal with clients that you know well. I am strongly convinced that to be successful in business, you must commit to long-term games with long-term people. And commercial construction lends itself to that mindset because typically a ground-up construction project or even a complex tenant improvement project, whatever the case may be, it takes a long time to execute that project. And that which you produce, the project itself, tends to stick around for a long time as well. So therefore, it behooves you to seek to develop long-term relationships with long-term people. I was at a charity event the other night that was honoring Jeff Hoops, the CEO of Swinnerton out of the Bay Area. And he's a great example of someone who's made a long-term commitment to the construction industry, 30 plus years playing long-term games with long-term people. And that should be your mindset wherever you are, because construction is a very local, personal business. And so you want to be the type of person who is known for developing deep relationships with the kinds of people who want to build successful projects. So you may be struggling today as far as dealing with clients that you know well, but you can accomplish a lot in 5 to 10 years. Have that long-term perspective. It may not be exactly the way you want it today, but think about how can I get to know the people in my market who I want to do business with. And one of the ways that you can get to know people is to keep showing up. No one owes you anything. You must earn everything that you get in business. Now, you may get lucky from time to time, but you know that if you want to develop deep, long-term relationships with people, you must show up and you must build projects that are on time and under budget and of high quality. That's going to be one of the best ways to get to know people is by showing up and performing. And in light of that, you have to get to know people as you go through stuff together. Every construction project has its challenges. And what you're looking to do is to develop strong working relationships with everyone involved in the construction project that you're working with. And think about the qualities of a good friendship. And I understand there's differences between personal friendships at times and business friendships. But think about some of the good friends that you have personally and consider how the qualities of those friendships translate into the business environment. For instance, a good friend will stick with you. They won't just bail out on you when times are difficult or when things are not going well. And you know, when you're working on a construction project, you sign a contract, and so there's an obligation, a legal one, to stick together to one degree or another. But you should really seek to cultivate that type of attitude with the clients that you work with. That idea of sticking with one another. Good friends tell each other the truth as well. Man, I'm so thankful for the friends in my life who are willing to look me in the eye and say, Eric, What you're doing here is not right. Those kinds of conversations have been very, very helpful to me over the years. And if you want to be able to get to know people well, one of the things you have to practice is telling them the truth and then receiving the truth when they tell it to you. Another thing about friends is that they have your best intentions in mind. They're not there to cut you down or to cast you aside. They're there to build you up. And there's this mutuality in a good relationship. And you should look for that with the clients that you work with. I want to encourage you. You're the prize in construction. Your clients are privileged to work with you. I understand that it's a privilege to work with clients as well, but you should treat yourself as the prize. Don't be that construction company that the client kicks around and uses and abuses any way that they want. Make sure that they're the types of people that you are proud of working with. So the third way to distinguish yourself and set yourself apart is to work with project partners that you trust. And construction is so unique because there are so many different parties involved in a successful construction project. You have the owner, you have the general contractor, the subcontractors, you have the engineers, the architects. You think about a company like Katerra. Katerra is a construction startup that has attracted hundreds of millions of dollars from investors who are betting on them. And their strategy is to be a one-stop shop, a designer, a supplier, and a builder for construction projects. And I understand the strategy, and I'm watching them closely to see how well they execute on the strategy, but I'm conflicted because I'm curious as to how realistic that strategy is, because construction is extremely complex, it's local, and it's specialized. The reason we have subcontractors in many trades working on projects is because they have the specialized skill and knowledge that is necessary in order to build a quality project. So working with project partners that you trust is absolutely essential. Now, how do you build trust with your project partners? First, you have to give trust. Let me give you a practical framework for how you can give trust. Number one, be slow to get angry. Number two, be quick to listen. And number three, be slow to speak. This is one practical way that you can build trust with another person or give trust to them. People are going to make mistakes. When one of your project partners blows it, don't immediately impute to them evil intentions, but make sure that you are slow to get angry and you give them the benefit of the doubt, because you're going to get into a conversation with them about why that mistake happened. And in those conversations, you must then be quick to listen. When someone's made a mistake, a project partner has blown it, get on the phone or drive out to the job site, get face to face with them ideally, and let them give you their explanation. Let them explain to you why this mistake happened and fully listen to what is being said, because you know how it happens. This happens all the time, right? An incident occurs, you jump to a conclusion, that's natural and normal. You then try and figure out what actually happened, and the data that you receive and the information that you get changes your conclusion, and you see that you were wrong about the conclusion that you jumped to. And that's why it's so important to not only be slow to get angry, but then quick to listen. And then finally, slow to speak. And those two things go together. Once you've spoken, you can't take it back. Now, I have a house full of kids, and they're always speaking to one another, getting into little spits and spats with each other. And one of the things that we're always encouraging our kids to do is to take the log off the fire. If you keep putting logs on the fire burns and burns and burns. And it's the same thing with our words. One of the best ways to take the logs off the fire and to dampen down a conflict and to build trust with the people that you work with is just to keep your mouth shut sometimes. So think through situations and keep calm before you speak. I'll give you some simple tips on building trust with people. Number one, be on time. That really helps to build trust quickly. Number two, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Don't lie about what's going on a project. Now, that doesn't mean that you necessarily always give every single piece of information and open up the kimono and tell them exactly what's going on and the challenges that you're facing. But you want to tell them the truth as much as you're able to without deceiving them or misleading them. You should never be doing that. Number three is admit mistakes. If a mistake has been made, take full responsibility for that mistake. Number four, and this is for the GCs out there, pay on time. I tell you, one of the ways that you can build trust with subcontractors is to be consistent in your payment for them. If they've completed work, make sure that you're paying them for the work and that you're not financing your company with the dollars that your owners give you. Make sure that you pay those subcontractors, and that will help to build trust. Another way to build trust is to ask for help. If you need help, it gives people an opportunity to give you help, and that helps to build trust over time as well. Now, the fourth way for you to set yourself apart from the crowd is to maintain high quality, efficient construction work. And one of the ways that you can do that is to focus on process improvement. Every aspect of your construction company, every aspect of the bid and the build and the billing, each one should have a process associated with it so that you can execute it consistently. So what is a process? A process is a systematic series of actions directed to some end. And in those series of actions, there's a great deal of dependency between the steps of the process. Consider, for example, the big process of first getting work, planning work, and then building work. You may have estimated a project accurately, and you may also have skilled field and project management folks, but if you botch the process of the project handoff from the estimators to the PMs and the field, your profitability will suffer. So if you think about the dependency of those steps, it doesn't matter how good you are at estimating or how efficient you are in the field, if that process of the project handover is in some way limiting your organization. So you have to stop and focus on the least strong part of the process. And in this case, it's not the estimating and it's not the building, but it's the handoff between estimating and building. So instead of estimating, complaining about the field and vice versa, let's get together and figure out how we can have a better project handoff. And that's how you improve a process, right? You find the weak link or the bottleneck, and you give your resources and your energy to addressing that bottleneck. And that's going to set you apart, because as you do that, you'll be able to maintain high quality, efficient construction work. Let's talk about the fifth way that you can distinguish yourself from the field and from all the other folks. And that is to emphasize and demand safety. This is self-explanatory and rather obvious, but people are your most valuable resource. And it is essential that we send our folks home safely every single day. Lack of safety impacts profit, it impacts your reputation, and you know how deeply it can impact people's lives. So how can you emphasize and demand safety in your organization? Number one, it begins in the design phase, where you can identify potential safety risks and then modify systems and methods to address those safety risks. Think about site-specific safety that you can emphasize for each project prior to construction. What you can do is get the safety team together to identify potential risks and safety issues that can be addressed during the buyout process, and then produce a plan of action tailored to each individual working on that construction site. And that plan should give guidelines for how each member of the construction team should be behaving on the site to maximize safety. And it should explain in detail how the employee should eliminate the safety risk in his or her construction area. And then also what you should do is then review the site's safety plan with the construction team and get each crew member to sign off on that plan, stating that he or she understands and will follow through on the guidelines provided. So in other words, you have to plan for safety if you're going to be able to emphasize and demand safety, and you have to be crystal clear on what it means to be safe. So emphasize safety every day. Remove any barriers to safety. One of the ways that you have to do this in many companies is you must ensure that your safety professionals are bilingual. And you should be celebrating safety on a regular basis. If your guys and gals are kicking butt on their site and they're not having accidents or incidences, you should celebrate it regularly with barbecues and with events so that they understand how deeply you appreciate it. It starts with you. And I want to encourage you not to undermine your safety professionals. Some of you maybe have come out of the field, and back in the day you were used to kind of cowboying, and your foremen and your supers come to you sometimes and they complain about the irritating safety guys. Hold on a second. Don't let that happen in your business. Don't undermine your safety professionals, but stand on their side for the benefit of the organization and the safety of your people, and make sure that you emphasize and demand safety. The sixth way to set yourself apart is to insist on timely payment for all dollars earned. And what that requires on your part is a degree of discipline to keep track and get reports from the field on every piece of construction that you have installed and built and completed. But you've got to understand that it's not done until it's reported, and it's really not done until it's paid. And I think it's important that you have that mindset that, yes, you might have won a project, and yes, you might have built a particular part of the project, but until you've got money in the bank, you really haven't accomplished the purpose of your business. And that is to get paid for producing excellent construction projects. So it takes courage on your part and on the part of the people involved in your accounts receivable to insist on timely payment for all dollars earned. Remember, if you've built it, you're owed the money. And this is business. And you should never feel embarrassed about stepping up to the plate with owners and with GCs and asking for the money that you are owed. Persistence is the key here. Be willing to be the squeaky wheel, but be a nice squeaky wheel. And what I mean by that is this. When you're on the phone talking to the person in charge of accounts receivable or the person that's answering the phone, they may not be able to necessarily cut you the check right there. And so you have to be able to talk to them in a respectful and a kind way, but you must be insistent and do whatever it takes to make sure that you get paid the money that you are owed. The seventh and final way for you to distinguish yourself from the crowd and make a lot of money is to have a financial cushion to weather the bad times. In the past 60 years here in the United States, we've been hit with 8 recessions. And we all remember the last one, at least those of us who are, in our 30s and above. That occurred between 2007 and 2009. And many years ago, when I was out and about talking to business owners, I ran into this one guy who gave me some great advice as to how to weather the bad times. And you can apply this advice during boom times and during recessions. Number one, low overhead. Think about your overhead at the moment in terms of your construction company. How low is it? Do you have that sneaky, unnecessary overhead creeping in? Times are pretty flush for most guys and gals in the United States right now in terms of construction, and it's easy when we're making money to waste money on unnecessary overhead. You should really be focusing the expenditure of cash in your business on winning and building great projects. And any other monies that are going to areas that may not be focused on winning and building great projects, you should be very careful about those monies and keep a low overhead. Let me give you one point there as well. Err on the side of generosity to your key players and frugality towards yourself. Because when times get tight, you want to be able to draw on that reservoir of goodwill with your key players to keep them close and help you to get through those tight times. And by being generous with them during the good times, it can help to build up that reservoir of goodwill. Number 2 is stay humble. Today's success does not guarantee tomorrow's success. Part of human nature, it's kind of weird, is that when things are going well, we think they're just going to go on forever and ever and ever. And it's kind of the same thing when things are going badly, right? When things are going badly, we sometimes don't see a way out of it and think that's going to continue forever. And neither of those things is true. Typically, in most people's lives, there's ups and there's downs. And in most people's businesses, there's ups and there's downs. So you may be doing very well right now, but next year or the year after, because of things out of your control, things may not be going as well. So keep focusing on what you can control. Stay humble. Don't get too puffed up when things are going well. Don't get too downcast when things are going badly. But try and distinguish between luck and skill, and don't mistaken a little bit of market luck or a rising tide lifting all boats to your incredible skill as a leader and a construction professional. Stay humble. And then the last piece of advice this gentleman gave me is it's not what you make, it's what you keep. We know in construction that the top line is one thing, but it's the bottom line that counts. And often there can be a big gap between top line revenue and bottom line profitability. Make sure that you are keeping as much of your profit as possible, that you're focused in on building safe, efficient, high quality construction projects. So you're not just making top line money, but you're keeping as much of it as you can. And let me encourage you, stash your cash. Put away as much cash as you can in an advantageous way to yourself so that you have cash available to take you through the tough times. So those are three pieces of advice in terms of having a financial cushion. Number one, low overhead. Number two, stay humble. And number three, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. As you listen to these 7 ways that you can distinguish yourself from other construction companies and make a bunch of money, you might be thinking, you know, Eric, you're just giving me another list of things to do. Thanks a lot. And I just want to stop for a moment. All you have to do to get something out of this episode today is think through those 7 ways and identify one that you can go to work on. And if you work on one for every 90 days for the next 12 months, it can help you make a lot of progress in terms of distinguishing yourself from your competition. So back to my bleached blonde hair. I went back to school, and really during my school years, I had a bit of a talent for distinguishing myself in the mind of my teachers with my behavior as a bit of a rebel without a clue, right? Not rebel without a cause, rebel without a clue. And my blonde hair was a part of that rebel without a clue phase. And I succeeded again in setting myself apart from people in my school. I remember distinctly going into the headmaster's office. And I can't remember if my dad was there or not, but I know I was there. And the headmaster commanded me to dye my hair back to its original color, which was going to be kind of tough, right? But I complied. My dad was a bit mad at me, as you might expect, and I dyed my hair back to something vaguely resembling what it was originally. So no more bleached hair for me. My mark of distinction went away. Now, fortunately, this doesn't have to happen for you. If you take these 7 ways of distinguishing yourself from other construction companies, it can set you apart from them and make you a unique business to work with. So here's your takeaways from this episode. Look at these 7 ways, prioritize the list and pick the most important one and commit to working on it in the next 90 days. Ask yourself when you pick that way, what's working about it, what's not working, and in what specific ways can we improve? And you may not make much progress in the first week or the second week, but if you as a leadership team in your construction company focus on one of those ways for the next 90 days, you'll be surprised at what kind of progress you can make. And then after you've worked on that top priority, perhaps you can go on to the second priority on the list and do some work on that in the next 90 days. You can work on 4 of those 7 areas in the next year, and that could have a tremendous positive impact upon your organization. So as we wrap up the episode here, I want to encourage you to take practical action. You can go to the show notes. You can see each one of the 7 ways. You could download the target market analysis tool that I put together. That might help you if you want to do some work as far as the niche is concerned. Your focus as a construction leader, particularly if you own and run a company, is to distinguish yourself from your competition. And I hope these 7 ways can help you to do that. My name again is Eric Anderton. I really appreciate you listening to Construction Genius. Please give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And please give us a rating as well. Share this episode with people that you know that may benefit from it. And please feel free to contact me. You can reach out to me on my website, ericanderton.com, or on LinkedIn. I'm happy to interact with you, get your feedback on these episodes, any suggestions you have as far as other episodes that you'd like me to focus on, other topics. I'd be deeply grateful for those suggestions. And thanks again for listening to Construction Genius.